Alright, so I'm gonna, like I said, I'll be recording this, and I'll usually record our class sections, and then later on in the day I'll post them to the Google website, so that Google Class, so that you guys can look at it if you missed something or something to that effect. But let's go ahead and get started. So this is Calculus Period 3. So what we're going to do is I'm going to start off by telling you guys what calculus is, just a nice brief overview. Then I'll talk about how our class is going to work and how you'll be graded and things like that. After that, I'm going to take you to our Google Classroom site and just kind of show you how I've set that page up and how you can best navigate your way through that. If you're like my first calculus class that I got through today, we ended up having like an extra 20 minutes towards the end where you were able just to go ahead and stay signed on if you wanted to, or sign off and just work on homework and stuff. So, but that's pretty much our objectives for the day. And like I said, if you guys have questions at any time, just go ahead and unmute yourself and say, hey, and I'll answer your question. Also, by the way, before I go any further, if you guys could just type hello or present in the chat for me, that's how I'll be taking attendance today. So just go ahead and type that in there, and we'll go ahead and get started. So, what is calculus? Well, calculus is what I like to call the mathematics of change. It's where you take basically everything you've learned before, and we add this element of change to it. And that's pretty much what calculus is. So, you know, what pre-calculus does a lot of times is it gives you a snapshot in time of what an outcome would be at some particular point. Like, for instance, you know, how much money do I have after working for 5 days? Boom, you've got one solid answer. But calculus kind of looks at numbers as they're moving. So, for instance, how fast am I earning money, or how fast am I losing money, and how are those rates affecting each other? So calculus has to do with moving numbers, so to speak, and we'll kind of delve into that with some depth as we go. There's three big ideas within calculus. They are limits, differentiation, and integration. So I'll give you like a little preview of what each of those are, but that's pretty much what we're doing all year, is those three topics. So first of all, let's talk about what a limit is. In pre-calculus, you could use a given x value to find a specific y value. So, for instance, on this graph here, let's call this graph f of x. Okay, now suppose I were to say to you guys, find for me f of 0. What would that be? What would f of 0 be equal to? And at this point, if anybody feeling brave enough, you can unpause, unmute yourself, and tell me the answer. What's f of 0? Nobody's feeling brave enough. All right. So I'll just tell you the answer then. So 0 in this case would represent the x value. And so I'm really asking you to tell me what's the y value when x equals 0. So on our graph here, the place where x equals 0 is right here. And the y value that goes with that would be 4. So f of 0 equals 4. Now that's pre-calculus. I ask you what's x, and then I tell you what x is, and then I ask you what's y, right? Now, calculus is a little bit different. What if I were to ask, what is f of 1? Well, some of you guys might say 5, but I'll stop you there. I'm not going to let you say 5. It's not 5. The reason it's not 5 is even though at x equals 1, y equals 5, like right here, the problem is that's an open dot, which means that the function that we're looking at here doesn't actually have a point there. So f of 1 is actually undefined. All right. So how can calculus kind of deal with something like that? Well, we can deal with that with something called limits. So in calculus, what we could do is, instead of talking about what is y when x is a certain number, we ask the question a little bit differently. We can say, as x approaches 1, what does y approach? So in other words, we would write it like this. As x approaches 1, as it gets closer and closer to a value of 1 for the x, what y value are we getting closer and closer to? And the answer now you can say is 5. Now that might seem stupid to you, but it'll make sense like why we care about stuff like that a little bit later. But the point here is that the function doesn't actually exist at that point, so we can't say that y equals 5, but we can say that y approaches 5. And believe it or not, that actually opens up an amazing door into all kinds of beautiful things that we'll be learning this year in calculus. So limits are the heart of everything we're going to be learning. So like I told you, we're going to talk about something else called differentiation and integration. Well, neither one of those would exist without limits. So limits are the heart of all calculus. So let's talk about differentiation. In pre-calculus, you could find the average rate of change of a function. Now, I don't know if that might ring a bell with some of you guys, but suppose we had this parabola here, right? Your teacher last year in pre-calculus at some point probably asked you to find an average rate of change, and what he meant was he would give you 2 points on the curve, and your job was to imagine a straight line connecting them and then find the slope between those 2 points, and that's what we would call the average rate of change. Okay, but in calculus we go a little bit further than that. Instead of finding the average rate of change between 2 points, what we do is we find the instantaneous rate of change at a single point. So here's a picture of that. So in this case, instead of finding a slope between 2 points and calling it an average rate, we find the slope at 1 point. And that tells us at that very instant what is the slope of that function. And that's what we call an instantaneous rate of change. That's what differentiation is. Differentiation is basically finding the instantaneous rate of change, or the instantaneous slope of a function at any point. And that's actually where we're going to start this year, is by talking about derivatives and differentiation. All right, next slide, we're going to talk about what is integration. In pre-calculus, you guys could find area underneath of a curve so long as that curve was like a common geometric figure. Like if I asked you guys to find the area under this curve, you would find the area of a half circle, right? Find the area of a circle and cut it in half. So you get to know the radius and you're good to go. But in calculus, we can find area under weird-looking shapes like this. So long as we know the equation of the function, we can actually find weird-looking areas like that. And that's what integration helps us do. Integration does a little bit more than that, but I think that's the easiest way to think about it for now. Here's a really interesting fact. You guys know that subtraction is the opposite of addition, or division is the opposite of multiplication. Well, integration is the opposite of differentiation in a really interesting way. So somehow the slope of a function is opposite from the area under the function. So that's kind of a strange, non-intuitive way of understanding things, but that's what they are. All right, so here's our very optimistic perspective of how this year is going to go. Everything in red there has to do with derivatives. Everything in green has to do with integrals. And then blue, we only do 1 unit on limits. And this is kind of the time frame that we're looking at. My hope is to be done by the end of February with everything, so that we can spend the last 2 months just preparing for the test. So you guys, this isn't just a normal calculus class. This is an AP calculus class. And what I take that to mean is that means we are spending the year preparing for one big test. Now, some people might not really care about the test too much, but regardless of how you feel about it, that's what the class is. So the whole class really is geared towards getting you ready to be successful for that exam. So that's the purpose. That's the overarching goal. So what do you need to provide for this class? Well, you should have a 3-ring binder, 2 inches at least. We are going to be taking notes. Although I do have some books I'm going to ask you guys to pick up from the library. They're not ready to be picked up yet. I don't use the books as your primary source, though. They're more of like a secondary source. The primary source is your guys' notes, and that's why I want you to have a 3-ring binder. You need a place to keep your notes. Now, I've got some great news for you. You're going to love this. when you guys do come in to pick up your books, one of the things you're going to pick up is the notes for the entire year. I printed them all out for you guys. All you have to do is pick them up, put them in a binder, and you're pretty much good to go. I've never done that before, but I'm trying it out this year. We'll see how it goes. That way you guys don't have to print them out, or you don't have to write so much by hand. You'll still have to write a little bit, but for the most part, I printed almost the entire set of notes for you for the entire year. So you'll be picking those up when you pick up your textbooks. Okay. Another thing you're going to need is a College Board approved graphing calculator. I put a website here, and this document that we're going through right now, by the way, you don't need to be taking notes on anything I'm saying. I've uploaded it to Google Classroom. If you want to print it out, you can. If you want to take notes, you can, but it's just going to always be in Google Classroom, so you can always find this page and come back to it if you want to. But you can go to that website there, which I'll show you. I gave you a link to it somewhere else as well in Google Classroom, so you guys can see what kind of graphing calculators are allowed. So here's the bad news. Graphing calculators are quite expensive, so if you don't have one, that's going to make you feel a little uncomfortable. They can be anywhere from $100 to about $150. Now, before you say, well, screw that, I'm not going to do that. Well, are you going into a math-related major? Are you taking another calculus class next year? If the answer is yes, then the $150 that you're going to spend on this graphing calculator is not just good for this class, but it's good for your future. You're going to need it for every class after this, I guarantee you. So it's a good investment. The second thing is that you don't necessarily have to buy one. At some point, I'm hoping, at some point our school will be checking the ones out that we have here. We actually have some school versions that you can borrow. The bad news is the school versions may not be always the best one. There's some good ones here, but there's also some nasty ones, so I don't know if you're going to end up with a good one or a nasty one. But it's nice to have your own. A good reason to have your own is because here, take this scenario. You're spending all year learning how to do calculus, right, on a calculator of one kind. Well, if you don't have your own calculator and you haven't been practicing on your own calculator, and test day comes and all of a sudden you have to borrow my calculators and you don't know how to use them, you will not pass your AP exam even though you know how to do everything, because you need that calculator to do it. Part of the AP exam actually requires you to use a graphing calculator. So if you take the test on a day, and you don't know how to use the calculator you're using, you just failed, and that would be horrible. So you really want to have your own calculator that you're using all year long, that you're very familiar with, so all your questions will be answered by the day of the test. But now in the meantime, while you guys are waiting to save up money to get one or take the time to go buy one, there are some options, and I'll show you on our Google Classroom. I posted something for you. You can actually download a virtual one onto your desktop computer, and you can also just search for graphing calculator apps as well on your cell phone. And what's cool is most of those, they're called emulators. They make your screen look exactly like a real graphing calculator. So if you're working with that calculator and you buy the same one, then you'll know everything like you're used to. And a lot of times they're free or they're really, really cheap to do it that way. The downside is, guys, on the actual exam though, you can't use your cell phone and you won't have your desktop computer. So you actually have to have a real graphing calculator at that point. So if you've been doing all your work on your phone all year, and on test day you come borrow mine and it turns out my calculator is different than the one on your phone, you just failed your exam. So even though I'm giving you guys ways to access calculators in the meantime, the goal is really to go get your own calculator. Okay, I know it costs money, but it's worth it. I recommend the TI-84. One is because Texas Instruments are just really common. You have a lot of resources that are available for them to be used for. Also, that's really the one that I'm familiar with. That's the one I'm going to be able to help you out best with. I've looked at Casio's before, and me and the students that use them are stumbling through how to figure things out. But if you want me to be the best help to you, you're going to want a TI-84. That's the one I teach from and everything. How soon do you need one? Well, like I said, you can download them from the internet now and just use like a virtual one for now. But as of Wednesday, I'm going to start using a graphing calculator. So you need to get that stuff rolling soon. What books do you need for this class? None of our books are virtual. They don't have any virtual books for calculus. So You're going to pick up your standard textbook, which is this Larson one. You're also going to pick up a Barron book, which is a test prep book. And you're also going to pick up later in the year, I don't know how we'll do it, but we'll figure it out, a free response question. They're called FRQs. Free response question sample question book, which we'll be going through to prepare for your exam. And also, this is not a book, but you'll be picking up the lecture notes as well. So at some point, whenever they figure out how they're going to let students come in to pick things up, you'll be grabbing those things. Okay. Now, how is AP Calculus AB different from other math classes? Before I answer that, just remember, if you have a question, just unmute yourself and say, hey, what's up? I don't see the chat, so I don't know if you guys are typing questions in there or anything right now. So just unmute yourself and say, hey, what's up? Anyway, so how is this class different? Before I talk about how it's different, let me tell you why this is important to talk about. I would say probably about half of my calculus students are like this. They are students where last year in trig or pre-cal or geotrig, whatever you want to call it, they got really good grades. They got like A's maybe. They got like an A grade of an A. And they got that without studying, and they did their homework sometimes. That will not happen this year, I guarantee you. I'm not just trying to scare you. This class is harder. If you do not study, and if you do not do your homework, and if you do not do the practice and everything I'm telling you to do, at best, you're probably going to end up with one letter lower than what you're used to getting in a class. That's just how this class is, very intense. So, and I said that's at best. I had a kid who aced his geotrig class 2 years ago, and he took my class last year, and he got a D. And the kid was really smart, by the way. So, just be aware. It is a harder class. Now, let's say why it's harder. It's faster paced. Okay, we have to finish by March, so we have a couple months to prepare for the exam. The challenge level's a little bit up there. Interestingly, there's two things that make calculus challenging. One thing that makes it challenging is the questions can sometimes make you think a lot more than you're used to. Like especially like the word problem type questions. They make you think a lot more. Now I'm going to help you with that though. Those last 2 months of school before you take your exam, we're going to go through so many of them. By the end of that 2-month period, what used to be very daunting will become very familiar to you. So I'm not too worried about that in the long run, but in the beginning it will be very intimidating. The other thing, though, interestingly, that makes calculus hard is you guys are going to find that most of calculus is not that hard in most students' opinions. It's just not that hard. The calculus isn't the problem. You want to know what the problem is? It's the pre-calculus. If I gave you guys a quadratic function right now and asked you to find the average rate of change, could you do that? If the answer is no, you're going to have a hard time because I'm going to show you how to do all the old stuff that you need to know how to do. Don't worry. But if you don't have all that old knowledge ready to pull, then this is going to be difficult for you. You're going to have to really study. You're going to have to review. You're going to have to pick things up. Like I said, I'm not going to expect you to know how to do anything without me telling you how to do it. But the more you know coming into this class, the better. The more you need to review, the harder it's going to be. Like I told you, calculus is basically just pre-calculus plus change. So if you don't remember your pre-calculus, you don't know what to do to it in order to make it become calculus, right? So the pre-calculus stuff is very important. Every test in here is going to be cumulative. After all, this is an AP class. I'm preparing you for an AP exam, and the AP exam is cumulative. So to prepare you for that exam, every test we take will be cumulative. That means when we take a test in Unit 3, you will also be tested on things from Unit 1 and 2. It will come back. The workload. You can expect at least an hour of homework a night. Now, I put 1 to 2 hours. Right now, I'm really trying. It's hard for me, but I'm really trying to keep the workload small because we're doing this distance learning thing, and I don't know how stressful this is going to be for you. I really don't want to stress you guys out. Believe it or not, I do not like stressing students out. I'm a very laid-back person. I think stress actually hurts your ability to learn, and I care about my students, so I don't want you guys stressed. But guess what? No matter how much I want you guys to not be stressed, you signed up for a very stressful class. So I'm going to try, but it's not going to be easy. Right now, I'm really trying like heck to keep your workload to about 5 hours a week. But whenever we're not doing distance learning, it could reach upwards from anywhere from 7 to 10 hours a week. If you don't do that, you'll be that student whose grade is lower than you're used to, I promise you. It's a harder class. There's a lot of work to do. Another thing that makes AP Calculus a little bit more challenging is the writing. It's not a kind of class where you can really just write an answer and say, there it is, I got it. You actually have to show your work and explain in words how you got your work. And the way they want you to explain it, they're actually very precise about how they want you to write it. For example, this year actually I got to grade the AP tests for the for the AP exam. They were actually taking points off because instead of saying how fast something's changing, instead of saying, oh, the thing was moving this fast, they didn't use the word rate of change. And because they didn't use that word, boom, they lost that point. It was killer. They grade really weird in how they want you to express yourself. I'm going to teach you exactly what you need to know in order to express yourself. But on top of learning calculus, you're also going to need to learn how to write your answers because they're very picky about it. The good news is grading, the way that you're graded on the AP exam is actually easy. So for instance, what's a 4 out of 9 in percentage? Well, that's actually less than a 50%, right? But if you get 4 out of 9 on your AP free response question, that's passing. So they grade hard, they give you hard questions, but the grading's the grading makes up for it. So sometimes during the school year, I'll grade you just normally. That's if I'm giving you something a little bit simpler. But I will be giving you AP level stuff sometimes. And when I give you that stuff, I will grade it AP style. So my hope and goal is not to destroy your grade, believe it or not. But I do have to keep the level of challenge up there. So I'm going to, like I said, I'm not trying to destroy your grade, but I will be teaching you guys at an AP level and grading you in an AP way. Okay, because this is a AP class. So just be prepared for that. So that's kind of some of the front-loaded information. Let's talk about the class norms, policies, and procedures. Wednesdays are quiz days. Every other day is just lecture with class practice. Okay. So how is all this going to work when we do distance learning? I'm going to jump down here to the 4th bullet down. It says each week you'll be given the work for an entire week. So you guys probably have already noticed that I've got the entire week's workload already uploaded for you to look at. And I also provide for you, if you guys look at this 5th bullet down, I also provide for you a schedule of what is due, when it's due, and how many points it's going to be worth. Now, I hope all of your teachers are telling you a week in advance, if not more, what you're going to be doing. I hope your teachers aren't telling you every day, we'll try this now do this. I hope it's just they tell you everything a week in advance. The reason I think that's very important for you guys right now is because one of the biggest stresses I saw from my students last year during our quarantine learning time was they didn't know how to manage their time. Whenever kids didn't have to go to bed at a certain time and when they didn't have to come to school at a certain time and turn things in at a certain time, they could not keep track of their work and when to do things, and their lives blew up. It's happened to a lot of kids. You guys need to learn how to manage your schedules. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is if you know what you need to do for the whole week and you can plan it out. Later on, I'm going to show you a little template I made for you guys. You don't have to use it, but it's something I'm providing to help you guys plan your weeks out so that you don't fall behind or get stressed out, etc. So anyway, yes, I'll give you the work 1 week in advance, and there'll be a schedule attached to it so you know what's due, when it's due, and how much it's worth. Now, when we come together like this is what I'm calling Facetime because we're actually working together live. All right? Now, when we're working together live, I'm not going to be using this time to teach you guys, okay? You are going to watch the lesson and do the homework before we get together, okay? So, for instance, on Wednesday, 2 days from now, we're going to meet up again, face-to-face. By then, you should have watched the first lesson on YouTube, you should have taken notes, and you should have done the homework, and you should have had it turned in to me before class on Wednesday. Okay, so what are we going to do on Wednesday then? Well, on Wednesday, I'm going to take any questions that you guys had about the homework or the notes. That's what it's all going to be for. Now, you might think, well, if I didn't finish the homework because I didn't get it, does that mean I'm going to lose points? No, I want you to turn it in before class just so I know that you tried it. So let's say that a student raises their hand and says, hey, Mr. Bailey, can you help me with number 2? The first thing I'm going to look at is I'm going to look at, did the student actually do anything? Did they do their notes yet? Did they actually try their homework? If they didn't, I'm going to say, you know what? You need to go watch the video first before you ask questions. Why am I doing that? Because a lot of students last year didn't watch the videos, they didn't do the homework, and they came to the FaceTime and they just basically pretended to ask me questions like they were confused. But really what they're doing is making me do their homework for them. That won't be happening this year. So you need to turn your work in to show me you actually tried it before you come to class, and then I'll take your questions. Okay? Now, after I answer your question, you think, okay, now I know how to do it, you can re-upload the homework assignment in a completed, now it's more completed for your full credit. Okay, so that's how that's going to work. That's a little confusing, so don't forget, unmute yourself and say, hey Bailey, let me know if you got a question, because I don't know if you guys have questions. You guys are being too quiet. I know there's questions out there. Go ahead, ask it. I guarantee you there's people out there that are wondering the same thing right now. All right, how are you graded? Tests and quizzes make up about 80% of your grade. Homework and notes makes up 20%. Let's talk about your tests a little bit. I give you a test at the end of every unit. That's about every 4 weeks or so. On the schedule that I uploaded for this week, you will see when an estimated test day is. It's subject to change, but it's close to that. I always provide a sample test or a study guide in advance so that you guys know what's going to be on the exam. I do provide study sessions. The test, when we're in class, I give it over 2 days. Okay? So on the first day, I give you the basic test. So like, let's say we're in Unit 3. Well, on the first day, I'm going to give you the Unit 3 test. And I just grade you on that like normal. And I keep it pretty basic, pretty simple. But on day 2, I give you an AP multiple choice test, and it's review questions from Units 1 and 2, the units before that. Okay? And those questions are about as hard as you would expect to see on an AP exam. But the good news is, I grade it on an AP scale. So like 4 out of 9 would be passing. Part 3 is also on the second day. I also give you free response questions on those days that are like AP style. And once again, those are also graded in an AP fashion. So I give you 3 parts over 2 days. Now when we're on quarantine, I don't care if you do it all in 1 day or over 2 days or even 3, just so long as you've got it all done by the due date, I'm happy. Okay? So, but when we come back to class, that's how it'll be. When we're back at school, you're not allowed to use notes or study guides on the test. You can use them, but if you do, it will cap your grade at an 80%. But while we're on quarantine, of course, all tests and quizzes are automatically open book. There's nothing we can really do about that. It needs to be that way. I always allow for students to retake tests, so if you get a bad score and you don't like it, you can retake it. But if you retake it, the highest grade I'll allow you to get is an 80%. Okay? And when you do retakes, even when we're in school, you can use notes for free at that point. I don't mind if you use notes on your retake. Quizzes operate the same way as tests. It's just that quizzes happen more often. Quizzes happen once per week on Wednesdays. Now, this week, we're not going to have a quiz. We will probably have one next week. I'm pretty sure of it on Wednesday. So Wednesdays are quiz days. And what the quiz covers is anything from last current Wednesday, so a week's worth of material. All the same rules about retakes and using notes and all that applies to quizzes as well. Let's talk about your homework. I don't grade your homework for accuracy. I just expect you to try it. You do have to show your work, obviously. You can't just write the question and the answer, but for most problems anyway. But for the most part, just make sure you're showing your work. Okay. Homework will usually just be 10 to 20 problems, 30 to 60 minutes a day after a lesson, and it's due before the start of the next class. Now later on in the year, especially like September, I'm going to start throwing in another homework assignment every night. And what that's going to be is review questions from the previous unit. And those are going to be coming from the Barron book that you're going to get, which is your AP test prep book. So you're going to start seeing some AP style questions as a review, and those will be due at the end of the week. Around December, January, and February, we're also going to start hitting up FRQ questions, free response questions. So that'll also be due at the end of each week. Homework help. Now, last year I used Remind. This year I haven't set Remind up yet. I might. But what I want to try something different this year. I want to try using Facebook Messenger. And there's a reason for that. But I'll get to it later. But for now, you can talk to me pretty much any time of day once we get these technologies set up. I don't care. I had students talking to me sometimes like at 10 p.m. at night before they went to bed or before I went to bed. And I was helping them with math then. And I'm totally cool with that. I'm more than happy to help you guys at any time through text messaging or something like that. Anyway, notebooks. I will ask you guys to turn in your notebooks at the end of every test, graded on neatness, organization, and completeness. The free response questions, we'll practice free response questions. So later on in the year, you're going to get a little blue book, and in that blue book is like just pretty much every free response question that's been asked on the AP exam for like the past 20 years. And we're going to gradually work our way through that book. The reason for that is because by the time you've worked your way through that book, when you actually take your AP exam, I guarantee you the test you take will look almost exactly like everything we've done. You'll get very used to the test. So it's a great resource, but we won't have it till later on in the year. So at first, when you guys start your FRQs, it's going to be hard because they're AP level questions. But after you get some practice, you'll start to see some patterns. You're like, okay, I've seen this question before. I know what to do. So you'll get used to it, but it will take some practice. So we'll kind of get to that later. But when I grade them, just remember it'll be graded on an AP scale. This is my absence and late work policy during normal school time, but since we're not in normal school, I'm just going to skip this slide for now. But I will talk about late work during distance learning. So the way I've set this up is there's kind of like 2 due dates for every assignment. The first due date is the real due date, okay? So for instance, your 1.1 homework is going to be due Wednesday morning before class. Okay, but if you don't turn it in at that time, that's okay. I won't take any questions from you during our FaceTime, but I will still take it. But every day after that that's late, you basically lose a point. Now, the second due date is the Saturday after the first due date. So the first Saturday after the first due date, I will no longer accept the assignment after that. So you have until 8 a.m. on Saturday to get everything turned in. If it's not in by then, you just don't get credit and it's done. So if you don't have assignment 1.1 homework turned in by this Saturday, 8 a.m., you no longer can receive credit for it. Okay, of course there's exceptions due to health or emergency issues, but in general, that's the principle. Now, by the way, let's just say you guys didn't actually get the homework done. Should you still sign in on Wednesday? Yes, you should, because that's how we take attendance. Okay. Now you might also be wondering, well, what if I did the homework and I watched the notes, but I didn't have any questions? Should I still sign in? Yes, you should, because that's how I take attendance. But here's the good news. If you did the homework and you watched the lesson and you understood it 100%, all you need to do is sign in, say hello or present, and then you can sign out. You do not have to stay for the entire FaceTime session. Because like I said, it's really just to help students who needed help with the lesson. Okay, so, and that's pretty much what I just talked about here. So when we have our FaceTime sessions, just say hello or present, or anything at least once, so I can give you credit for being there. Academic dishonesty. So obviously when we're doing this at-home learning thing, the ability to cheat, especially on tests, is greatly increased. And in fact, it's almost impossible to not cheat. So But just do be aware that if I look at your work and I suspect that it's not your own doing, or that you really didn't know what you were doing, but somehow you magically got the answer, one of two things could happen. You may just receive a 0, or I will contact you and say, hey, let's talk about your test a little bit. I need to make sure that this is your work. So can you explain how you got this? Or I might even just give you a smaller miniature test that'll be different from everybody else's, just to kind of see, did you understand this one? So just be aware, there's a lot of opportunity to cheat with homeschool learning. I understand that, but do understand that if I notice it, there are consequences for it. So try to be honest, please. I appreciate it. I've got other things up here that apply to when we're usually in school, but we're not, so I just put X's through them. You can read them if you want to. So no questions, huh? Nobody's got any questions so far? I've addressed everything clearly? Okay. I will say that if anybody has signed in since I started, at some point make sure you type hello or present in the chat window so that I know to give you your attendance for the day. Anyway, so we're going to move on to talking about your assignments for this week. So let's see here. All right. So take a look at your screen here with me. So at the top, that's where we're going to have your link to join the discussion group if you ever need to. Now, a lot of you guys, when you use Google Classroom, you're on the stream. I've been told a lot of students use the stream. The problem with the stream is that it doesn't organize things for you, and all you see is just this huge list of assignments, and it's going to be very overwhelming. I would encourage you guys to use the Classwork tab. Okay? On the Classwork tab, you can look over here on the left and you see categories. So you see we've got this one category here that says Week 1. You have another category that says General Class Information. So I'm going to click on the General Class Information tab here real quick. And it takes you to all the stuff that's in that category. So some of the things I've provided here for you guys are the school schedule. So if you don't have the school schedule yet, you can click on there. I've also got included there the notes that I just went over with you guys if you ever want to reference those again. Here I have a link where you can download a desktop TI-84 emulator. So it'll look just like a real TI-84, it's just that it's virtual and on your computer. There are other ones that you can get on your phone as an app, but I provided this one. But remember, it's not a substitute for the real thing. You really should get a real TI-84 calculator. I've also included some important links here from College Board. I've included here their AP exam calculator policy, so what calculators are allowed and which ones aren't. I've also included over here the testing dates for the AP exam this year. So, if you have another AP class that you can click on here, it has a list of all of them there. The next thing is I've got this weekly schedule that I made for you guys. So, like I said, I think the challenge for you guys this year is going to be learning how to run your own lives without having school kind of dictate it for you so much. So I want to encourage you guys to be very diligent with your planning. Now, you don't have to use this. This is just a tool that I'm offering you. But here's what I'd recommend. At the beginning of every week, maybe Sunday night or something, I would make a list of everything that's going to be due the following week, when it's due, and how long it's going to take you to complete it. I would also think about other responsibilities you have, like birthday parties or church functions or watching movies or doing something fun that you plan on doing, and then put it all on the schedule here, when you're going to do it for each day. Once again, some teachers may not be giving you everything they're going to be doing for the whole week up front, so you need to ask them so you can plan. Also, I suggest that you share your schedule with your parents or guardians. One of the biggest complaints I had last year was students would say, I'm trying to do my schoolwork, but I've got chores to do. I've got to watch my brothers and sisters. I've got to babysit. Well, guys, your parents didn't know your schedule probably. So plan out your week. Show them, hey, mom, dad, or whoever, this is my week. What do you need me to help you with this week so I can plan it in here? How can I move my schedule around your needs? It will help reduce a lot of family fights, a lot of family tension. They just need to know how you're going to be functioning in their home. Also, sharing the computer is an issue. You might want to plan when you need the computer. That could cause a lot of issues too. So talk to your family about that as well. So just some suggestions in planning. So use it for all your classes and be diligent. I just, for me personally, everybody's a little bit different, but here's how I am. Whenever I think about, I've got a huge project that's due in like 3 days, right? When I think about that project and I'm really swamped, I freak out. I get very nervous. I get knots in my stomach. But if I've planned out my week, I don't get stressed anymore. Here's why. I think to myself, oh yeah, I got that project in 3 days. What am I going to do? And I think, oh yeah, I've got my schedule. I know I'm going to put an hour in tonight, an hour in tomorrow night, and it will be done by then. So I don't need to freak out right now. I've got a time for it planned, and I have total peace. It works for me very well. So if you guys find that you really get stressed with being overwhelmed, planning your life can be a big stress reducer. So I would highly encourage you guys to use this. You don't have to, obviously. The last thing I've got included here is something that Miss Kim wanted me to share with you guys. It's just a document on all the online resources that you guys have access to. She especially wanted me to recommend you guys to Princeton Review, which is an online tutoring program with live tutors. Personally, I'd rather you guys use the messenger that I'm going to hook you guys up with to talk to me or your peers rather than Princeton Review, because what they'll do there is they'll show you things in a slightly different way than we're doing it in class, and it could be confusing. But you can use it if you want to. It works for any subject. All right, so that being said, let's jump up then to the next thing. I want to talk about this week's agenda. So once again, you're going to click on week 1, and it'll take you to week 1 here. And this is everything that's due this week. I try to upload things in the order that you're going to do them in, okay? But as an extra help, click on this week's agenda and click on that. And what I've got here is everything that's due, the order you should work on it in, when it's due, and how many points it's worth. Okay, so you guys can kind of see all your assignments in a snapshot for the week that way. Now, remember how I said there's 2 due dates? So for instance, the first thing you guys are going to work on today is called the derivative worksheet. That's due Wednesday before class. Every day after that it's not turned in, you're going to lose a point on it until, come over here to this category that says no credit after, until this Saturday. This Saturday at 8 a.m. If it's not in by then, you don't get any more points at all. Okay? So that's that. You have 4 things that are due by Wednesday. One of them you should be able to finish before our lesson's over today. The other one's really fast. It's the Facebook thing. The other 2 will take you probably about an hour. So really altogether, outside of our talk today, you'll have an hour's worth of work to have done by Wednesday. But anyway, I digress. So there's your schedule for the week. I want to talk about a couple of these assignments. So when you look at your notes, I always include a printed out version of the notes. So right now, since you guys don't have access to the printed notes that I made for you guys, I'm uploading them. I'll probably still do that even after you guys pick them up, just because I'm in the habit of doing it. But you can print these out if you want to, or you could just do them all by hand. It's your call. And I also have our lesson video that you'll watch. So tonight for homework, you'll turn on this video, you'll print out those notes, and you'll start taking your notes. Okay, after you finish the notes, you're going to come down here to do your homework. Just click on that and do the exercise. And just so you guys know, read the little notes that I put in here. So for instance, on 1.1 homework part 1, there's an important little message here. It says do 1 through 6. The worksheet actually goes up to number 22, but you're only doing 1 through 6. We're going to do the other ones later on. So there's that. And then finally, the last thing that's due by Wednesday is joining Facebook. So I would have already done this, but there were some technology issues. I'm going to be sending out an email for you guys to join a Facebook group. Now, before you guys freak out, you're not going to be my friend on Facebook. So the reason why that might comfort you is because I don't want you guys to think that I'm going to see your personal feeds that you have on your normal Facebook page if you already have one. I won't be seeing anything in your personal life at all. The only thing that will be visible is what you post in the group. Okay? Why am I doing this? Well, we're not in a classroom setting. Research shows that students are more successful when they collaborate than when they work by themselves. That doesn't mean you should never work by yourself, but it does mean that there needs to be some amount of collaboration. Well, with this type of learning environment, it's almost impossible to collaborate effectively. So I created a Facebook page, and hopefully you guys will go on there and say, hey, can somebody tell me what's up with number 1, or what'd you get for number 2? What strategies you guys apply? I'm having trouble with this. What do you guys think? So you guys can all work together and help each other out in that way. Okay. Another way that we're going to use it is if you download onto your phone something called Facebook Messenger, then that acts basically like text messaging. And that's what I'm hoping is going to take the place of the Remind that I used last year. So instead of using Remind, you guys can text me anytime throughout the day through Facebook Messenger, and I can help you with anything you want to. Okay? So that's the purpose of the Facebook page. Another thing is the last thing I've got for this week is Facebook Introductions. It's an extra credit assignment where you're going to upload a video of yourself introducing yourself to the class and respond to a few of your peers. So it's an extra credit assignment. You have to join Facebook. That's a required assignment, the group anyway. You do not have to do the extra credit assignment in Facebook, which is your introduction, but you can. It's extra points. So once again, any questions, feel free to chime in. I'll be sending out those emails to you guys hopefully later today sometime to get joined into the group. I've never done it before. I don't know how many bumps in the road we're going to run into as I try to get this thing set up. I hope it runs smoothly, but we'll see. Anyway, so there's all that. So I'm done telling you guys things about our class. We're actually going to start our first little assignment. We're going to do it together. So before I do that, are there any questions? Okay, so the first thing we're going to work on today, and this is it until the end of class, is we're going to do this Introduction to Derivatives worksheet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get you guys started on it, and then you guys are going to finish it. So let's go ahead and begin here. My advice would be if you have a printer, go ahead and print it out now and start making some notes on it. If you don't have a printer, you can just start jotting down your thoughts in advance, and then you can update your information later for turning it in. Okay? All right. Just a second, I got to get my board set up, and then we'll start going over this. Okay. So I'm going to get you guys started on this, and like I said, you guys are going to finish the rest. All right, so this is what I call Introduction to Calculus. We have a graph here. We'll talk about that in a minute, but let's read these directions here. It says each point above is generated by the function f of x equals x squared. Okay, so every point up here comes from that function. So if f of x equals x squared, write that down. I'm going to give you guys a second. I want you to tell me what are the coordinates of that point. And I'd appreciate if somebody could just go ahead and shout out the answer. You can unmute yourself. Once again, I'm presenting, so I can't see chat answers. I need to hear your voice. So anybody that can tell me the coordinates of that point.
Eight, 16.
Close. I like your 8. You had the right idea for the y, but it's not 16. I'll warn you that it's a
7.
What is it? 64. Now, let me share with you guys how how they got that. So you can tell by looking at the graph what the x value is. It's 8. So that's easy enough. X is 8. The problem is the y value is not very clear. I think you might have said 60, and that's because it's here, but it's actually not going to be 60. It's going to be a little higher than 60, so you can't tell by looking at the graph what the y value is. So how can we find the y value? Any thoughts?
You plug in the 8.
There you go. You plug it in. All right. So let me clear that. Now I'm going to show you guys what we're going to do now is we're going to be filling in our table here a little bit. So underneath of this we have a little table. Right here it says x equals 8. And we just got 64 for y. So why don't you guys go ahead and fill in the rest of these. Find all these other y values for each of the x values up there. And you guys can just shout out. What would this one be here, under the 7?
49.
49. Thank you for your answer. I appreciate it. So that would be this point right here. That's 7 and 49. You don't need to write that on the graph. You can, but we make sure it's in your table. What would the next one be?
36.
Thank you. So you guys got the idea there? So I'm going to stop there with that. Unless you have a question, I'll stop and I'll let you guys do the rest on your own there. But notice that there's another box underneath of that. And what I want you guys to do now is something a little strange, so try to follow with me here. Let me erase this point really quick. So let's go back to the 864 point. I think it was this one right here. That was 8, 64, right? Well, there's a line that's going through that. I believe it was, what line is that? I think it was line number 1. So line 1 is going through that dot, and follow that blue line, and it goes through this dot also down here. That dot is 2, 4. Okay, so line 1 is a line that connects the point 2, 4 to 864. Okay, what I want you to do now is I want you to find the slope of that line. So how do you find slope? Well, slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So why don't you guys see if you can find the slope of line 1. If you can't, it's okay, but I want to give you guys a chance to think a little bit. I'll show you in a minute if you don't get it. But go ahead and try it, and whoever's got it first, just go ahead and shout it out. What's the slope?
Is it 10?
It is 10. Nice job. So let me show you how he got that. So I'm going to call this point up here x2, y2, and I'm going to call this point here x1, y1. So it's y2, which is 64, minus y1, which is 4, over x2 minus x1. And so we end up with 60 over 6, and that's where we get the answer 10. So the slope of that line is 10. Okay? All the other lines that you guys see up here are also going to be going through this that point at the bottom. So let's move on to the next one there. The next one that we have in our table is the point 749, right? And that was this dot right here, 749. And it's still connecting to that point down here, which is 2, 4. All of the ones that we're working are always going to connect to 2, 4. So 2, 4 is always going to be our x1, y1, but our x2, y2 will be changing. So go ahead and see if you can calculate your slope there. And once again, feel free to shout out the answer as soon as you got it.
9?
9 is correct. Nice job. Okay, so unless there's a question or a request to do another one, I'm going to go ahead and leave it at that. before I show you one more thing. But I'm going to assume you guys can get the rest of this table done. Does anybody else have any questions about this table, or do you want to practice some more?
How can you explain how you got the slope for 7?
Yes. Yeah. So that's for line 2, right? Now line 2, I'm highlighting it right now again with my finger here. It connects the point 749 to the point 24. Now 24 is always going to be the x1 and the y1, right? But the point up here, which for this particular problem is going to be 749, so that's my x2 and y2. So let's work it out and see where the 9 comes from. So I've got my slope formula there, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So what's the y2 value?
49.
Right there is 49. That's my y2. What's my y1?
7.
4.
7 is x2. I heard somebody say 7. That's my x2. I've got them labeled there. I don't know, maybe it's hard to read. I'm not sure because my handwriting's not all that great. But my y1 is actually 4. What's x2?
1. 7.
x2 is 7, right here. And what's x1?
2.
There you go. And then from there, you're just going to go ahead and do the math. So 49 take away 4 is 45. 7 minus 2 is 5. And there's your 9. Okay? So I'm going to let you guys do the rest there for 6 through 3. And if you still have questions, I'll leave the Google Meet open for you guys, and you can still talk to me after this. But that's that. But do you have a question?
I have one question.
Sure.
As for showing our work, would we have to put it in the space that is given to us, or is that like something that we don't have to do
Thank you for asking.
right now with this worksheet?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So like usually on your homework and stuff, yes, I do want you to show your work. For this worksheet, you could I'm assuming many of you guys could probably do this in your head, or you're just going to use a calculator for some of it. So I actually don't care if you show your work on this particular assignment, but I'm glad you asked. Thank you for asking.
I have a question. So for these assignments, like especially this one, like this is a worksheet, do you want us to like type it out and turn it in digitally, or do you want us to take a picture of it printed out on a piece of paper and then turn it in?
Thank you so much for asking that. So I really love when you guys ask questions. I know that I'm not saying everything, and these questions are important. So what do you prefer?
To just take a picture and turn it in. 'Cause
Amen. I agree. Guys, trying to type math on a computer is a nightmare. Like when I made this worksheet probably took me like 30 minutes to type up, and I'm actually pretty good at it. Typing math sucks. So no, please, if you can, just do everything by hand and take a picture and turn it in. But absolutely, I mean, if you're a real techie kind of person and you want to type everything up, you're welcome to. But I'm going to ask you guys just to turn in pictures. So thank you for asking. Any other questions? So I want to show you guys one more thing on this worksheet because it's a little bit trickier, and you'll probably want to just use a calculator for it. After you guys do this first table here, there's another table underneath of it. Now for this table, it's different than the first table. With the first table, all these points were x equals 8, x equals 7, x equals 6. All those dots are on the graph that I gave you. But for this table, I'm giving you such weird-looking dots that they're not even on the graph. So at this point, we're just going to be doing some math. So we're not going to look at a chart to get our answer. We're actually just going to calculate everything. So let's go ahead and start here. Suppose I told you x equals 2.5. What would the y value be? If you need a calculator, that's fine, or take your time.
6.25.
There you go. So Once again, how does he get that? Well, we talked about how this is our function, right? And I'm telling you the x value is 2.5, so you're just going to plug in 2.5 for the x. You're going to square it, and when you square that, you get 6.25. Now, this is my x1, I'm sorry, x2, and this is my y2. And what's my x1 and y1? That hasn't changed. It's going to stay what it's always been. What's x1, y1?
2 and 4.
Yep, x was 2, right? And y was 4. So now I want to find my slope. So once again, I'll give you guys a chance. Find your slope. I want to connect this dot to this dot. I want to find the slope. Use that slope formula and see if you guys can find the slope. Tell me what it is when you think you got it.
Is it 0.2 repetitively?
That's not what I got. Let's let someone else give it a shot, and then I'll show you how to get what I'm pretty sure it's not that.
4.5.
It is 4.5. All right, so let's see how to get that. The slope is 4.5. So at least that's what I got. So let's see how that works. So we're going to do our slope formula, right? Which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So what's the y2 value?
Uh, 6.25.
25.
Very good. What's the x1? I'm sorry, not x1, y1. Y1.
I'm not going
So I labeled them with right here like x1, y1, x2, y2. Is it hard to see? I'm not sure if it's hard to see.
No.
Okay. So in this case, my y1 is 4.
No.
My x2, what's my x2?
2.5.
Good. And then x1 is?
X, what was it?
Yeah.
2.
There we go. And we're just going to go ahead and do our subtraction. So I think that's going to be 2.25, if I'm not mistaken, divided by 0.5. And you should be getting 4.5, I believe. Okay. So that's that. I'm going to let you guys handle the rest of this worksheet. There's really nothing new and fancy on there. Our session ends at 12, so I just so you guys know, you won't usually be online with me this long. It's because usually it's just going to be a homework help time, so you guys can stay as long as you want to. But once again, before you guys sign off for today, just make sure that you do type hello or present in the chat box so that I know you were here. And other than that, you guys are welcome to stay online and keep working on this and ask me questions if you want to. Or you can just sign off for the day, and we'll see you guys on Wednesday.
I have a question.
Sure, what's up?
How far do you want us to continue after the decimal? Like, keep going for the number?
That's a good question. Well, on this worksheet, I don't know, whatever you can fit in the blank spot I give you is good enough. But just so you guys know, that's actually a really good question that was asked, because on the AP exam, they're actually very picky about how many numbers you show after the decimal place. So just know that usually in this class, they want you to go to the thousandths place. So that's the third number to the right of the decimal. That's how precise they want you to be. So you can do that on this worksheet if you want to, or you can just write as much as will fit in there. But I'm not going to be picky about it this time around.
Is it okay if we do our work on the worksheet or no?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh.
Definitely. I would actually prefer that, but I'll take it either way.